Hello there.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Otaku Nightly Hour. Today we're gonna be with Raptor and of course Dr.Clef. So we've been coming off of recording quite a bit of different things. You guys were on a tangent before I just started recording, but I'm
And
gonna
it was beautiful too.
I'm gonna stream us towards the actual topic of today, which is a question that
Daisuke
you proposed
Ishiwatari.
Clef, which is indie games as the new industry standard. Are they exceeding AAA games now?
Well, first we have to
Quadruple A
start.
games,
Yeah,
actually.
first we have to start with quadruple A games, the Ubisoft, um,
Are they
and
good? Are they not?
how they fail to actually reach out towards the community. And I kind of I do have to blame the DEI incentives for most of those.
It's honestly just blaming the basics. They're like, all right, game, storyboard, idea, concept.
What is the
I
issue here?
I think the issue here is really that the devs don't play their own game
Or like their own audience.
or like their own audience. Yes, that goes back to the DEI thing. But again, what would be considered triple A? I'm not even gonna touch quad A because like
It's
that
not
that
real. It's bogus.
it's not
It's
real.
make believe.
It's something that the bigger game producers and developers, not really the developers
It's what
themselves, the
Big Gamer
publishers.
wants you to think is real.
Honestly, yeah, they want you to think it's real to justify a price hike,
70
and I
bucks
and
minimum.
I get it. Game development is expensive.
It shouldn't be.
It
Did
shouldn't
two
be
people make Pokemon
question
like
mark.
gold and silver?
5 actually.
5 with how many lines of code?
Not
Like
enough, if you ask me. They could have fit more things in there, but
right, but like
that was a
5 people
limitation of
made
the
a game
DS.
like that. 5
Yes, but
people.
to be fair, pixel art is infinitely easier to make
All
than
right,
3D
maybe you're
than
right
3D
about
model.
that, but you mean to tell me nowadays a decent game needs a bigger budget?
No, okay. What I'm here to tell you, I'm gonna. This is technically a little side tangent.
This is a little secret we have in the industry.
No, okay. I was essentially doom scrolling. I don't even know if I'm using the term correctly, but I was essentially doom scrolling through Instagram, and I bumped into a video of a programmer lady that was going through code that somebody else of a younger
Wrote
generation had given her, and I was looking through the code as she was looking through it, and all of it was just recalling from a different part of the program instead of just going like, oh hey, like the input can do it itself. I can just have it locally be part of this program instead of going, I'm gonna add it here as an index, and then I'm gonna go to a different part, and then I'm gonna call it,
too
and I'm
many
gonna go
big
to a
words. You need
different.
to simplify it.
You have to think about it like this. Imagine you get a pot, right? You put
Uh-huh.
that pot in one room, and then you go to another room, and you think, gee, wouldn't it be great if I had a pot in this room? Let me go back to the original room to grab that pot and put it in the other room.
Okay.
And you move on to the next room, and you go like, gee, wouldn't it be great to put this pot in a different room? Let me go back to the original room, see if I can find a pot again.
But why do you need to go to different rooms? Why can't you just do it in the same room?
Because it's not global, it would be local, and it would serve to optimize things so much better depending on who you ask, because programming languages differ.
So
uh
that is something the new generation of coders are doing.
yeah,
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
it's
It's redundant.
it's redundant, and it's why Call of Duty is 180 gigabytes for a campaign instead
Minimum.
of like the 30 it used to be.
300 gigs alone for Black Ops 3, I think.
No, Black Ops. Actually, you can dumb that down to like 80 gigabytes just for the zombies, but that's not my point. Black
That's
Ops
the
6
best
came
part.
out with like 180 something gigs. I think it's like the biggest
But that's
file size.
without Season Pass.
That's without DLCs. Period.
That's crazy.
That's not in. That's also, I think, not including any new microtransactions, which I have an issue with. I still believe Black Ops 2 was the best Call of Duty because microtransactions there cost you like $1 to $2, and you would get a whole set of things instead of just the camo.
I love Black Ops 2 because of the ending song they put like at the very end of the game.
And
That was so meta and
honestly,
also great. For
it
no
was
reason. You had the bad guy and like the main good guy. You were playing a good chunk of the game. They were both in the band with this real life band that appears.
no, that's
And they're
kind of
just
my point
absolutely
though.
hammering away like at a concert performing. It was beautiful. It was great.
Black Ops 6. I'm
Yes.
looking at the minimum requirements for this. 8 gigs of RAM. Not too bad, although most computers nowadays come with 12, so that's 2/3 of your RAM.
Uh-huh.
An NVIDIA GeForce 960 to run you at like a bare minimum of 720p. Good luck getting above that.
A GeForce what?
960. We are going back almost 2 decades.
Oh, so that's really low spec then.
You would think so, but you'd also basically be playing the game on polygons.
Okay. So the game is at a level where it could be all polygons, but it's not. They have
And
high
you
res
need
texture models.
a solid state drive with a bare minimum of 128 gigabytes of available space at launch.
So
That
are
is
these
not
specs
including.
crazy or are they reasonable?
Okay, the SSD, everybody should have already kind of like made their way into it. There's still people that hold out with hard drives. There's nothing actually wrong with hard drives. All of these things have their place. I feel like hard drives are still good for movies, for music, for things like that you just kind of the everyday things, but like more
Yeah.
gaming or productivity specific things should
All my
probably be
gaming stuff
moved
is on an
over.
external hard drive.
But
I am
is
not
it
shoving
a
like an SSD 1
I mean,
terabyte
there's
in when I already have that.
well, yeah, but there's external SSDs. Like I have a SanDisk external SSD
Is
stuff.
that what I have? No, I have a
Does it
WD brand
does
one.
does it look like a little square with like kind of flat?
A flat rectangle with the cord connecting to it, yeah.
Yeah, but if it doesn't have any moving parts, then it's an SSD.
You're right. Mine has a disc inside of it.
But
Bang.
anyway, so going back to the topic at hand and such like that, the AAA games are getting lower and lower in quality. Quality is kind of hard to compare and such like that. But let's just say like they're expected to up in quality every time a new game is to be released in the next year or installment and such like that. Yet
So
every time it's not really doing that. Is that correct?
yes, and I feel like that could be
No, I feel like
attributed.
it's the exact same in terms of quality, but the price is different.
We say that, but then I look at the Call of Duty games, and I think again it peaked in Black Ops 2.
I mean, the same could be said when we were talking about Pokemon. Pokemon itself is also a game in which their quality goes down because they want to post the game up front. If we look back to Scarlet and Violet on release day, there were so many bugs.
This is
Yes.
very true.
So yes, okay. I feel like that though was, however, an industry trap where you try to get more and more people to cover more and more spaces to get something out faster, and then you kind of start losing cohesion, where you have like I don't know, like 6 people trying to tell 6 different teams what to do, just so that they can try to go tell another like 3 or 4 teams on the side, hey, so do you like it like this? And like things get lost in translation.
Mm-hmm. And such. But I think that's also another downfall is that they're meeting like some self-fulfilled requirement that they need to like get a game out every year within that time frame and improve on things and experiment with new things, but when you're experimenting with new things, it takes time. It requires time to do so.
No, it doesn't.
No,
Pokemon's also the exact same example. Every generation they kept cooking up with something new. They kept experimenting.
yeah, it kind of comes back down to like team size, development time. Um, like for example, I'm gonna take Pokemon again as an example. The Legends Arceus game was probably the most original thing we've had out of Pokemon
I
since like
loved it.
Pokemon Ranch.
I
Mm-hmm.
loved it so much. But what about Pokemon Snap?
Pokemon Snap doesn't count because it's basically just Ranch.
All right, what about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon?
Okay, Mystery Dungeon is a completely different square because that's already gone off the deep end. Everybody loved it, Nintendo hated it, and that's how we
And
don't
it
have
was
any
made
more
by a
Mystery
different
Dungeons.
studio entirely.
Yes, it was one of the few times where where the Pokemon company
Game
in
Freak.
general. Well, no, Game Freak's been trying to get away from Pokemon for a while now. Like outside of how do I put this? They've been trying to, from my understanding, branch the series out more. Like they want to do something new with it, aka Legends Arceus. So
By different companies.
even though it was the B team on Legends Arceus, they did consult with it. And then you have things like Ilka who did BDSP, where yes, it was a faithful remake, but it was also a very boring remake.
But how? It's exactly how I remember it, just less pixelated and more chibi.
Okay, so aesthetics have a lot to do with
Cynthia's still a
how.
menace.
No, so yeah, Cynthia is obviously a menace, but like, so for example, in Pokemon Black and White 2, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't remember it was Black and White as well, but Black and White 2 had the challenge mode and the easy mode that you could only get by connecting both of them. But the challenge mode was something else. Like it presented an actual challenge. You had trainers using items. You had Pokemon with minimum of 2 perfect IVs. The EV stats were also changed around completely. It felt like you were going through the battle frontier, but like at lower level climbing up.
Okay.
And then that's another thing people didn't like. The very fact that the battle frontier in BDSP felt kind of empty.
I never do the Battle Frontier in any Pokemon game.
Well, it wasn't the battle frontier. It was the island. There was no actual frontier
Yeah.
in quotes. But again,
But
they take
going around to
things.
industry standards.
Okay, on industry standards, I feel like AAA games overbloat. They hire too many people to do a simple task. One very good reference is the designer for, I believe it was Fallout New Vegas. I think he was the director of it. He had asked somebody to write a very basic program for scoreboards on a game he was developing. After he had left Obsidian, because Microsoft, I believe, no, because Bethesda. Um,
Bethesda.
yeah, Bethesda doing Bethesda things. He asked them to write a very basic scoreboard just to be able to keep track of kills, deaths, etc., like points. And he basically told them, "I'll get back to you in 6 weeks."
I
To
feel like it could be
which,
done within a day.
the director responded with, "I can write that in 40 minutes."
Yeah.
And the guy stormed off. He came back with his supervisor. The supervisor was telling the director, "Hey, what did you do to make my guy angry? He's raving. He's doing whatever." And he basically explained it to him. And then he told them, "Oh, why don't you just give him the time?" And he pseudo coded the thing out like right then and there on a whiteboard. The guy left, came back, and told them, "Hey, can you give him at least 3 weeks?" And I'm like, "Well,
So
he
what you're
did it."
saying is that game developers at big studios sound a little more self-entitled.
They, from what I've seen, they feel more self entitled. Mostly because, again, it is a business. As an employee, you want to do your job because that's how you get paid. But at the same time, you kind of want to stretch it out because even in major, the way it usually works is even in major publications or in major studios, you get paid roughly minimum wage. And then once the game releases, you get a massive bonus depending on how the game did. that's something that's not a very common thing. Like it's not a very commonly known thing amongst the masses. Like if you've touched on game development or you kind of know people in game development, they kind of like give you a rough idea of how it works.
Okay. So,
So
when you contrast that layout to how indie games do it, what's the difference?
indie games are much smaller teams. They have way
But they're
more.
but they're not, I feel like, as pressured of a deadline in terms of things because
Not necessarily. So the reason why indies work better, why they feel better, at least in the fun department, is because they don't have. So you're right in the sense of saying pressure. They can, because the budget is smaller and they're trying their best to do with what they have to make it fun. They can basically kind of shrug it off. They can go like, okay, well, spent a couple $100 into it. I got pretty much my money back. People are kind of receptive to it. I have a general idea of my audience now. I can still technically risk more.
yeah, and such like that. And then I think it depends on the indie game. Sometimes it's worth putting it out kind of half cooked to see how it goes, and if people are
Early access
invested
is
into it.
not good.
Well, okay, not all the time.
Okay.
Not all the
Early
time.
access is a tool that is very poorly used.
Hmm.
The whole point of early access originally was to say, hey, this is my game. I am developing it as such. Anybody that buys into early access not only gets the game cheaper,
The full game when it comes out.
yeah, but you also get the full game when it comes out. You don't have to pay for it anymore.
Yeah.
You help me develop it. Here is the full
Bug
game.
tests,
Yeah.
fine exploits.
Yeah, and such like that. I feel like, for example, Hades 2 is doing very, very well with it, and such like that. And then that the new Olympus update that came with it, and such like that, uh, works fairly well for Hades 2 and
Wait,
such.
Olympus update, full release or early access?
Early access.
All right,
The whole game is on early access.
Yeah.
all right, Clef, you were about to say the other half of the thing. Like, it's a poorly used tool. This is what it does. But now, how is it poorly used?
It's poorly used in the sense that a lot of people, I'm going to use the term pump and dump, where they'll bring the game out, they'll bring the idea out, they'll put it on early access, and they'll basically just kind of do it to cash in on it,
And then
and
never
then
get back on it.
and then never get back on it.
Okay,
A
because I was gonna
perfect
say,
example, Kerbal Space Program.
there's also other games. Yes, I will get to that right now. I really want to talk about that. But there are, it feels like there's some developers that are like, oh, we pushed out this early access game. It is early access, not finished 100%, but we're gonna start pushing out updates on it, like as if it was an actual game in terms of story content. Like we're expanding the story, we're adding more to it instead of like, okay, why not finish the
The
game
entire
first?
story and stuff like that.
Well, okay, that actually I can attribute to the internet.
Yeah.
The creation of the internet, as much as it has helped people, it has damaged a lot of things because now you can basically go, you can shrug it off and go like, I can just fix it later.
Yeah, because I know.
As well as the fact that, like, for indie games and such like that, they cannot count on having a franchise going on further and such like that after their initial release and such like that. Like,
Yes.
That's not true.
Well,
how many people were super duper into like
Concord.
the first initial FNAF
oh
game
god,
and
don't even
stuff
get
like
me
that
started on
and
Concord.
everything. But Scott Cawthon himself has said he had no intention that Five Nights at Freddy's, the first game, was ever
Yeah,
gonna get him to the point that he has today.
no, yeah, a lot of these things just kind of happen. It is a right place, right time situation.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Uh,
but
let
like,
me.
but an example I
Okay,
want to bring back is like Ark Survival Evolved. While that game was still in early access, they were pushing out DLCs for it. Scorched Earth was one of them. I remember the day it came out, and at that point, I completely thought, "Oh man, this is the full release game, and they're already adding DLC to it." No, looking back on it,
no.
it was still early access while they were releasing DLCs. It was the craziest thing for an indie game studio to do. Now, that's my 2 cents on it. You were gonna say something about Kerbal Space Program.
Yes, I was gonna say Kerbal Space Program came up with a lot of promise. Came out early access.
A lot of goodwill already been, generated from the first game.
Yes, and
Then it
the
was bought up
studio.
by a large game studio, an established studio, not indie anymore.
Okay, so this is kind of what I want to draw the line with. How would you define indie? By
If
the
they
size of
have
the studio
made
developing it, the game's range, like what would you look at
I
personally? Like,
honestly want to say, at least my opinion of indie is that it's a studio that like everything's made personally by them at first, and then they move on to grow the company from there and such. Like they started from zero and they go up, but the moment that they're making regular games on the basis as their as they're like multiple games at a time and such is when I say they're getting to like triple A kind of territory where they could develop multiple games at the same time kind of thing.
okay,
That's not how I see it at all.
but by that standard, let me really quickly just
It's really hard to pin
uh
it down, but like I want to say like start off with that if we want to say like indie games like they're still starting off in the company kind of thing and stuff. Like
well, okay, but by that logic, would you say Supergiant Games is no longer indie? They're the
mm,
guys that make Hades,
no, I
that make
understand who
Bastion.
I know who they are and such
I
like that.
don't.
I want to say that they're moving upwards outside of indie because their name is getting more recognized is what I'm saying.
I feel like an indie company is a company. Well, it's independent. First of all, that's kind of what indie means.
Mhm.
It's small, startup. They don't have anything yet. The moment they already put something out on the market and now they're working on a second game, I feel like that's when you can no longer call them an indie type of company
Yeah,
officially. To the
like
community, they might still be called an indie like game company,
mhm.
but officially they're working on their second game. It might be the same as like the first. They're making a franchise out of it, or
But
maybe
then
it's a
what about the
completely
number
separate
of
game.
people? What about the number of people on the team and such like that? Because Toby Fox, for example, he's an indie developer who made
I would not
Undertale.
call that guy an indie developer anymore.
Well, he was an indie developer when he was
He started as one.
and such like that. But now he's in the process of making
Pokemon music.
Afterfell,
He made
Afterfell and such like after not Afterfell,
he made one
Deltarune?
Deltarune and
great.
such like that, and he goes and he's separating them by chapter and such like that, where it's free to play until we get to the last chapter. Then the whole game of Deltarune will be you have to purchase.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that
Which,
falls
by the
within
way,
my
we're still waiting
definition.
on chapter 3.
That falls within
How
my
we've
definition
been
of.
waiting on this.
So like they already finished Undertale. Great. They want to work on a new game. Okay, they're no longer like an indie game developer.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it. He's already written music for the Pokemon Company back in Sword and Shield. He wrote some of the music there. I think he also wrote some of the music in Scarlet and Violet. So he's not an indie level musician or game developer. This is a full-fledged like, game company in one person if you really want to look at it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not an indie game anymore.
So then, but indie games that have like a series of games already developed under their belt and such like that, but they're not that well known outside of that and everything. Like I know that there's game companies that make a lot of cozy games together under the cozy umbrella, um, and everything, and they help publish individuals games uh, to help it out and everything. It just happens to be that it's under their company to help fund it and everything.
Uh-huh.
Would you say outside of that, even though it's made by a separate, different creator every single time, would that make it that the game's no longer indie because it's being published by a already non-indie by your definition company?
It sounds like you're talking about a publisher. I'm mostly referring to the developer. If the
Mm-hmm.
developer has made
So
prior work, they're not
where do
really.
you draw the line between the developer and the publisher? Because again, Supergiant Games, they are their own publisher. They
I don't know who
published.
they are.
They made Transistor, they made Bastion, they made Hades 2.
And
But
do
the
they
thing
make
is,
those games themselves, or do they have like
They make the games
the
themselves.
developer?
yeah,
No,
but
they are they
but
are
it's
developer
also
and publisher.
yeah, and then there's also like every single person head of each game is a different person every single time that happens to be working in Supergiant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it kind of sounds like they're both developer and publisher. Sega makes some games that are both where they're both developer and publisher, but I think there are some games under the umbrella of Sega where Sega is not the developer. Someone else does it. They just do it under. They just publish with Sega.
Do you want to do
Oh.
it by like team size then, and such like that, where like the team developing the game isn't meeting to like the AAA level of funding for development?
Well, that's the thing, though. You say AAA, but what about double A? What about single A? Like, where are those categories? Are
Well,
they
okay,
categories?
technically single A is indie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Double
so it
A doesn't really exist as a category anymore. Thank you very much, EA.
And then there's the AAA, where they're
And
fully funded. They're fully funded with a large staff of team on a reg.
yes,
yeah.
but
So
I feel like AAA though has kind of lost its meaning in a sense. And I'm sorry I cut you off there, but I was gonna say I'm gonna bring like the old 2000 kind of 8 2012 games. I feel
Mm-hmm.
were like the peak of AAA. You had Halo 3. You had 12 million concurrent players on a single night for Halo 3.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to
opening night
nowadays,
or like
no,
at
no,
any given day?
consistent. At any given day, at any given week on a weekend, you'd have 12 million players. On a weekday, you would still have over a million, where a lot of games right now are struggling just to hit like 2.
2 million?
And yeah, like 2 million.
I know
And
there's
it
some games that are like concurrently with like 1,000 people playing it, like on Steam.
no, yeah, but we come back to that. That was just PC in general. Like that was
Concord.
yeah. Oh god, no, please no.
I have no idea where their player base was,
It,
but yeah,
it
other
felt
games that have
like
recently released are like at 1,000, 2,000 people concurrently,
yeah,
and you're over here
and
talking
they're
about people like games where people were playing it by the millions, like on the weekends,
exactly. And my point is those games felt like a labor of love. It my
as opposed to
issue
the ones now where
my
it's
issue with the industry right now is that everybody's playing it so safe and everybody wants to like have this kind of expansionistic view of like, oh yeah, if Destiny made it work, we can have them made it work. If Overwatch made it work, we can clone them. Concord.
you also have
But
Marvel Rivals that also clone them.
Yes, but Marvel Rivals feels like a good game. It feels like the people that put the effort into it when like I like the franchise, I like my player base, that translates to money. The same thing went for Baldur's Gate 3. The people that made the game, Larian Studios, made it feel like they were into the franchise, that they
They
knew what they were doing
play
with it.
Game Studio.
So it kind of doesn't really. I feel like it doesn't really account to how much money goes into a project. How much, like, obviously, the money and time and development does really contribute to how quality wise your game is and such like that. But the other factor that we have to take into the fact is how much the team cares for their game and such like that, which I think is an abundance when it comes to indie projects and the like, whether it's their first time in the game industry to maybe their like third time in and such like that they are definitely passionate about the project that they're going into
I disagree.
You also
in
like
terms of
this.
like the good quality games and such like that. That's the defining factor to me.
Well,
I get where you're coming from, but I was gonna say really quick, it also kind of comes down to this. Would you consider video game storytelling as art?
I
If
like
I'd
to
you
say
think
look,
so.
so.
and that's kind of where the debate comes in, and I feel like that's where another line in the sand was drawn a little bit. We kind of stopped treating or by we I mean the industry, kind of stopped treating games
Like an art form.
like an art form and more
A
like a
business
micro.
check off
Yeah,
these checklists and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, and
exactly.
such like that. I've kind of noticed that too when it comes to certain things. Like, okay, I'm gonna use Pokemon as an example because we've referenced Pokemon a lot on this podcast, but
Pokemon.
but it's definitely shown a little bit that the the world development of the world of Pokemon has been really limited down to the fact that, like, we need to make new Pokemon, we need to make new characters, we need to
Battle,
do,
trade, collect.
and stuff like that. Put in a new feature that makes the game unique compared
They don't
to
need a
the
new
past
feature. Go
games and
back to
stuff
Mega
like that
Evolution.
and everything. You know, like they're trying really hard to check off the thing of new Pokemon game to forget we came into this world of Pokemon because we want to invest our time into the world of Pokemon and everything, and not,
Catch creatures, collect, build a team, have fun memories. That's what it was originally about, right?
yeah,
It's
and
what
such like that.
it's what what's it called? It's basically a trap that the bigger you are in the industry, the more likely you are to fall into. And again, I'm gonna reference like franchises, Call of Duty. Call of Duty specifically. Jesus Christ.
Call of Duty, Treyarch, uh, or some other like developer that also does
Pokemon, Street Fighters, Sakurai bless his. Was it Sakurai? I think it was Sakura. That bless his heart with Smash.
Sakurai, I think.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was Sakura. Bless his heart with Smash. He saw the writing on the wall and he went like, "I get that you guys love the franchise and I appreciate it, but
but
I'm done.
no,
Like, I have nothing more to give the franchise. There's nothing more original that I could give you that I haven't already done."
it's like that one saying where it's like, do you die early as a hero or live long enough to become the villain?
Well, it's sad to see something go, and you're always gonna love it and be fond of it, but you have to realize there is reason for things to end.
Yeah,
And that's something that, like, again, I'm going back to like Call of Duty as a franchise. People love the shooter genre, they love the game. They don't like, however, the fact that they're not, one, listening to the community. Two, microtransactions went from like $2 to be able to buy the reticle, the skin, and like skin based attachments or like things of that nature
to $2
to
per, like, every single little thing you
no,
listed.
no, to $15 per just the weapon skin. That's not even the ones that have animations. No, that's just the basic reskin of the gun.
Yeah,
Could you earn them for free in game?
No.
But you bought the game,
Yes.
so you own the game.
Yes, but you cannot buy them
But you should
on the
own
game.
the content that is within it, even the skins that you have yet to unlock, so long as you work hard to unlock them.
Some of the skins aren't actually even available to you to buy without purchasing the DLC that they are associated with to begin with. So you're gonna buy the DLC to get the skins associated with it, to then buy the skins associated with it separately.
That's crazy.
That's the industry right now because it makes money. People buy it. It prints. Why do you think FIFA's not dead?
FIFA?
yeah,
Yeah,
the sports games.
the sports game, the soccer game, because yeah, it's a bunch of middle-aged dads with money that like playing their soccer games. But
Interesting. I had no idea it was middle-aged dads specifically.
it usually is. I have a friend who, like, he says, yeah, no, my dad's bought every single FIFA game since the
Maybe
beginning of
passionate
since
about
the
it, and
beginning of
he's the
time.
sole exception.
I suppose. But okay, so, like, do you think we could learn something from, like, quote unquote indie games that could be attached to the AAA games besides, like, the
Listen to the
obligation,
community.
like the obligations and such like that they
Oh,
have to
for
fulfill?
sure, for sure. The very upfront thing, the most important thing is play your own game. For the love of God,
Playtest
if
your
Well,
own
you
that's the
game.
problem, though. There are people, game developers, who play their own games and are like, yeah, this is fine. We like this. like this is gonna be a great game for the general audience, and then it gets released to the general audience, and they're like, the writing sucks.
That's
The
the second.
gameplay is terrible. I don't know who designed these mechanics, and they're like, well, you guys are just haters. You just don't like our games, do you?
That's another thing. Learn to accept criticism. The general audience is a kind of
Your
mysticism.
customers.
Yeah, your customers, the general audience is a mysticism. If you're going to make an RPG, you already have an established player base that plays RPGs. The person that plays Fallout New Vegas might not like Fallout 4, but it's still an RPG and they're still going to give it a whirl. You kind of just have to like narrow down your customer base into what you think the customer base is actually going to be. Because the second you just kind of throw it out there into the wind and say general audience go, the general audience is usually a lot of casual people that kind of go like, "I'll give you $5 for it."
I'll give you $5. Right?
But,
Yeah, well, we're
and then
selling this for
also,
70
like, you
bucks.
gotta be fair that in some cases, in some critiques and such like that, you have to be able to distinguish what isn't genuine critique that needs to be fixed, or just, a troll and such like
Yes.
that. Because there are people, like, let's give the benefit of the doubt that some of the critiques that they are getting are troll critiques and such like that. But
Morbius was
you
so
have to
good, you guys should put it in theaters again.
but you have to like also realize that, like, sometimes in some cases some people were like, hey, I'm not having a fun experience because I'm having a really difficult time trying to know what part I have to go next, or it's really difficult for me to get to the next section because there's a low drop rate for this material that I need to get to the next area and such like that and everything. Then listen to your audience. If multiple people are saying it and such like that, then yes, you need to
No
fix that issue.
Man's Sky was the best example of this.
Would you consider them an indie studio?
They are technically an indie studio, yes.
They only have one game, right?
They have 3 games actually.
Okay. Well,
They
I
have
like.
a little known game called Joe Danger,
Okay.
and then they made Joe Danger the mobile game, which wasn't honestly as successful as they wanted it to be.
But they gave it a
And
shot.
they gave it a shot, it was good. And then you have No Man's Sky, which honestly clawed its way back from the brink. Dear Lord, the launch of the game was terrible. But the very fact that
It
they
was
didn't,
the comeback of the century.
yeah, the very fact that they didn't dunk their heads in the sand and go like, la la la, I'm not listening, like Fallout 76 did for like the first year of its launch, because like
Mm-hmm.
76 was terrible for the first year of its launch.
Ugh.
Jesus Christ, it's gotten better now.
From what I've heard, at least, but outside of the game, there was a lot of issues too.
Outside the game, there was a parade of issues. They had a. I'm telling you this one mostly because I wanted it. I wanted to taste it. They had a thing called Nuka Cola Dark Rum.
Never happened.
It never happened?
It happened, but it was a disaster. They promised you a Nuka Cola bottle with like a very delicious rum, the way they described it. And what they gave you at the end, made of glass, frosted glass, and what they gave you at the end was a normal kind of long beer bottle encased in a plastic casing with a really flimsy sticker. And that same casing basically made it so that if you try to pour any out, it would go all over the place. You couldn't even like properly get the rum in a shot glass
So
because it would
lesson.
spill out.
So next lesson, to learn from indies and such like that. If you're gonna promise something,
Measure yourself, please.
yeah. Like okay, I remember when Cult of the Lamb was first coming out to physical release and such like that. They said that their deluxe version of the game was gonna include an art book, but they knew that selling it on shelves for a PS5 release was definitely going to be hard to include the art book. So they didn't make like a hard copy hard art book like most game art books would usually do. They included it as a paper version. Granted, yes, it's a lower quality art book than other art books would usually do, but they measured themselves. They knew how much that people would want to support them in that sense and everything. So they measured themselves a little bit back down and included that their deluxe version of Cult of the Lamb, which I believe it had a special name for it or something like that, would include the art book, but it's just a paper-based art book, which is fine. And honestly, I think people paid like the $2-3 extra dollars for the PS5 deluxe version for that, as well as the fact that it comes with like I think some other like DLC stuff and everything. I'm not 100% sure. I would have to double check what the deluxe version of the Cult of the Lamb was. Let me look that up real quick.
Do you know what game company should definitely make an art book? All things considered, with what's happened recently,
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon.
Yeah.
An art book over the lore that they've had over these like past decades for their like what are they on like their 30th anniversary now?
Mm. Okay, so uh
With all of the leaks that's come out, they can just get that, redact some things, and then like add like the rest of the stuff that wasn't leaked and just put it into an art book and be
okay.
like, hey guys, here's what we thought about our Pokemon game development over the years.
So yeah, for the Cult of the Lamb PS5 Deluxe Edition, which by the way is no longer available. No, I mean for Nintendo Switch, and everything. You get the game itself. You get the collector's box, which is just a sleeve over. I think it's either a sleeve or it's a metal case for with special art on it. The art of the lamb booklet, which is just a small booklet and everything. It's not that bad. As
You
well as
say that, but all
the
that came to mind was Trump's Art of the Deal book.
no, and then
Art of the Lamb, Art of the
Art of the
Deal.
Lamb.
and you also get the digital download of the official soundtrack, which they knew they could measure themselves for because they couldn't really offer anything on top of that. Like, I know for some collector's editions for other games they offer a plushie and such like that and everything, but the I think it's Devolver who makes Cult of the Lamb.
Devolver Digital.
Yeah, and stuff like that. They wanted to kind of reel themselves back a little bit and everything and not overpromise something to be included with a collector's edition for the Switch of all things. So they reeled themselves back and they promised what they could with the Switch edition. And honestly, it's not that bad considering it's like a $10 $10 to $15 additional compared to the base game of Cult of the Lamb for the Switch.
I feel like, personally, with collector's editions and things of that nature, I feel like we kind of have to roll it back a little bit.
I
in
honestly
the-
could. I honestly think we could do without collector's editions in
I feel like
in some cases. In some cases,
Yes. I know. I
Like?
definitely agree with you. Like, some things don't need collector's editions. I'm looking at you, Call of Duty.
Uh,
Oh,
got
Actually, I love their collector's edition for Black Ops 3, was it? When or no, Black Ops 2. It was 2 or
I
3 when they had the
love.
little mini Juggernog mini fridge. I so
Yes,
wanted to get that, but like
that was. I think that was free.
I was literally in Europe when they announced that, and I just could not like place an order for it.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing.
I just didn't
As
have
of
money.
lately, when it comes to collector's editions and stuff like that, like this is probably a little bit old and stuff. I haven't been on the whole collector shopping experience thing. I just buy the thing when it comes out. I get the base game and that's it, and such like
Well,
that. But
I-
like the last time I heard the failure that was the Resident Evil 4 collector's edition pre-order.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, that one was a total failure because um people were promised that they were gonna get the statue. The statue never came.
Okay, on the topic of collector's editions, I feel like, again, measuring yourself is a thing, and that if it's gonna be a collector's edition, it should have something worth calling it a collector's edition for.
Yeah, for that
Like,
price difference from the base game.
yeah, like, again, like Raptor was saying, the Juggernog mini fridge, that thing looked amazing. I wanted it. I didn't have money at the time. I cry,
Same.
but I wanted it. and it motivated me to try to get it. And you look at collector's editions now, and like, while yes, a lot of them have the art.
In-game codes for accessories for your weapons or your player skins, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
fine, but like
cool, but
something better,
Is it
please.
not? Is it worth the $20 to $30 price difference of the base game?
Sometimes more than
okay,
$30.
okay.
Yeah.
I look at this is a specific example. The collector's edition for the Calypso Protocol.
Mm.
That was, while the thing looked amazing, the statue was great. The collector's edition was bought separate. It did not come with the game.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, actually, that was kind of a problem that came up recently with Sid Meier's Civilization 7 reveal for their collector's edition. Base game, $70. Collector's edition was like a whole lot more, but the wording was so unclear and so unspecific when they first announced the collector's edition that they kind of made it sound like as if you would get the collector's edition book, physical copy, and all of these other trinkets as well, but you wouldn't get the game, digital or physical. Like you may get the digital edition, but the collector's editions normally give you a physical copy of the game. And it was
Yes,
so unspecific. It was kind of like, oh, we'll give you all of this stuff, but we won't get you the physical copy of the game. You'll have to buy that separate. And we're like, what? What do you mean?
like
Later they clarified
why?
and they're like, yeah, sure we will. But like initially we are like, what do you mean you're not gonna give us the base game itself with the collector's edition? That's weird. That's unheard of. That's not something a AAA title game company does an oopsie on, you know?
Was it a Resident
It's
Evil 4? I remember one of them said like the statue was this like really big cool like fight scene and such, but every time I look up a Resident Evil 4 collector's edition right now and such like that, it gives me only the Leon statue. Like
yep.
solo Leon. I remembered it was supposed to be Leon fighting one of the zombies.
Maybe it's one of the other remakes.
I think it was
Resi 3?
Resi 3. No, not Resi 3. Maybe Resi 2. Because Resi 2 had a statue. I remembering correctly.
Yeah, but that's also Leon.
Yes, but that one had Leon and Claire.
Mm-mm. Not from
No,
the photos
actually,
I'm
never mind.
seeing.
No, yeah, that one just it just had Leon doing the little star pose, the little T pose, little cross pose with
I
the guard.
remember there was a statue that it was supposed to be like Leon versus like one of the monsters, or am I thinking Resident Evil um Village? No,
Village.
I don't think so. Cuz I
No.
remember it was last year that the statue wouldn't come in. Either way, but yeah, like if you're unable to keep your promise for what people had initially paid for at the last minute, at least like say something along the lines of either you will get the related product on a later date or um refund the portion that would have been for the missing product and stuff like that. Don't make them still pay for the game. Pay for like the miss like the whole thing with the missing item still attached to it
Oopsie, our bad. Let us make it right.
and such like that. Like honestly, the whole thing of the whole issue about collectors editions is that if they can measure themselves and then be honest and upfront that the price, the upsale price for this is going towards this portion of your reward for the collector's edition, it'd be fine. I think most people would be very honest, appreciative of the honesty and such like that. I think what was it for when it initially first came out for the exclusive of this version, they were very upfront that the bonuses were the reason of the upcharge, but that if
Ah,
you want to fully understand, just enjoy the game, that they encourage you highly just to purchase the base game and
so
such.
okay. What happened was the thing, it was Resident Evil 4. It was with the statues and the collector editions. Is that GameStop didn't limit themselves? They left
They
despite the
promised
fact
everyone who pre-ordered.
despite the fact that Capcom had already said there was a limit to how many collector's editions were actually going to be sold.
Mm.
GameStop kept going, and thus they had to cancel collector's editions orders like a week before
Mm-hmm.
the game release.
At
And
random or at a first come first serve basis?
no
At
one was
random.
getting it.
Yeah.
No one?
Mm-mm. Because GameStop ignored Capcom.
That's crazy.
Hell, like, okay. I remembered this. Thank God it was a pre-order bonus and not something you had to pay for. But GameStop is notorious for underestimating how many people are gonna want something and such like that and everything. So, back in my day when I used to work at GameStop and such like that, when Tears of the Kingdom came out, there was not enough pre-order bonus plaques because that was what came with it. The store that I worked had like 94 pre-orders. We only got 54. We only have 54 plaques. Let alone the fact that they're not going to expect that any of the stores are going to have enough of the plaques for the people who pre-ordered online and sent to their house, who quote unquote have the right to get the pre-order bonus just by walking into the store. If we do not have enough product to even provide for our own in-person pre-orders and such like that, let alone your random walk-ins. Anyway,
Crazy.
getting back to the topic at hand and such, there's a lot we could learn from the indies and such like that, which is that honestly, I think they just don't treat their audience like idiots.
Yeah. Okay. That can be applied to a lot of things, but I feel like you're right in the sense that indie does have that better than the current AAA standard.
Yeah,
Where
because they
like
have this respect for their audience in a sense where they know, like,
you,
they can't BS them.
yes and no. Okay, so I feel like the indies have a better odds of BSing their audience, but they don't do it for the same reason that AAA games try to,
Mm-mm.
because you want to keep the audience that you have. And as an
Versus
indie
like AAA,
developer,
yeah, versus AAA and such like that. They're like, we already have the audience. They're always gonna come back, whether we have a good game or not.
Whether they like it or not.
yeah,
And honestly, that's kind of upsetting with that realization, because they don't treat us like we actually help fund the lights in their company and stuff, because they don't they're fully confident that we will continue churning money up to them.
Do
that's
we?
that's kind of my point, though. Yeah, I mean, we do. We buy Pokemon. We pay for the DLCs.
Mm-hmm.
We buy the
And
plushies sometimes.
we buy like the other related stuff and everything. Hell, there's that's how like all the sports games keep coming out and such like that. People are gonna continuously buy it the same thing every year. And it's kind of upsetting because it's like these guys who play them, even though I don't play the sports games myself, they deserve a quality game, and yet it's the same game every year.
Maybe
We're
that's kind of what they
finally
want.
getting a different company at the Game Awards. They showed it. We're finally getting a different company making a different version of the same soccer game,
Mm-hmm.
but in the kind of like Shaolin Showdown style of it.
Mm-hmm.
A more arcadey one, and that's kind of what a lot of people also look forward to. Is
Mm-hmm.
that again? I absolutely love Black Ops 2. I think it's still the best Call of Duty. I'm gonna use it as an example again. It felt like an arcade game in a triple A suit. It felt fun. And that's something that not a lot of things have now. It's the feeling of fun,
Mm-hmm.
which is why at the beginning I said play your game. And just because you find it fun doesn't mean a lot of people won't find it fun, which is why QA, which is generally the first department to get axed, is a department that is more important than people think it is,
Yeah,
because it fishes out your bugs. It tells you like, oh, I'm very frustrated at this mechanic. Just because you played through it once doesn't mean that on a subsequent follow-up playthrough that same mechanic isn't gonna frustrate you.
yeah, like I know a lot of people. This is probably like gonna really like bring up some things for people, but if you watch Jane animations, you probably remember she talked about fossil fighters for a video and such like that. The
I
fossil,
absolutely love that game.
the
That's so
other
good.
two fossil fighter games that came out afterwards, however, were not good.
No, not at all.
Mm-mm. Because here's the thing, they didn't touch on like the whole wacky story of it and such
Of
like
the
that,
first one,
of the first one, and they tried to add other new mechanics like, oh, by the way, you could clean right on the spot rather than having to walk all the way back. Yeah, that was a great quality of life idea and such like that. However, why am I driving a truck to do so? And everything. The truck has jank controls and everything, as well as the fact that digging and finding everything I need requires me not to be right on top or in front of the spot that I think the fossil's on, but I have to be specifically right next to it in a very odd adjacent way with this claw to dig up the fossil and then excavate it and such like that. It's a frustrating mechanic that you traded out for a quote unquote quality of life improvement to excavate on the spot.
has its drawbacks
Yeah.
and its positives.
And don't get me started on the designs of the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs got uglier, in the next game because they went to cutify them a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that you kind of lose your audience a bit there, in a sense of like, we
Like,
have this thing, we
traditionally,
have
a dinosaur
our
is scary.
well, it's not even
Ish.
just, it's not even that. It's that like the first game, the saying goes, the first thing will always be better than the second in the eyes of the people, because
Mm-hmm.
it's what introduced you into it.
Mm-hmm.
The second saying I will give is, we thought so much of if we could, not if we should.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been said better, but
Yeah,
the
you guys were so
reason
preoccupied on whether or not you could, you never
could,
stopped to
you
think if
never
you
said
should.
you should, exactly. But my point here is, it's not that they cutified it, it's that they lost the point and the reason why the audience liked it in the first place. They tried to go from like our established audience to back to the mystical and ever so elusive general audience,
Which
the
is like,
casual.
yeah, because I think they were trying to really hard hit Pokemon fans or Digimon fans, somewhere between the two.
I
Exactly.
like the space
But
dinosaur aliens. They were pretty cool. Where
yeah,
are they in the
but
other games?
yeah, but that's the thing. Like, it is a lost in translation thing. You're trying to grow your audience by dipping into another existing franchise, like another existing fan base, instead of just going like, "Hey, we
We have
have
our
our audience.
audience. Let's move from there,
We
and word of mouth
yeah,
will work.
word of mouth will bring people in." Everybody underestimates word of mouth now, but the internet is the best example of word of mouth.
Yeah.
YouTube is an amazing example of word of mouth. More people trust YouTube news from just these random people sitting in their rooms talking about it than
Then the
actual news
actual
reports
news
now.
reporters.
Yeah.
And that's because
And
it feels
if
more
they were
down
to
to
come
earth.
back, if they were just to come back and make another Fossil Fighters game, I'm pretty sure it would get 100% more coverage like on YouTube than it would like in the past, like by a huge margin.
Yeah,
Those like
because
3 games that came out like
My
long ago, long
yeah,
my
before the internet, no one's gonna
my
remember.
dear sweet non-existent god, where is Spectrobes? Free my boys. They were
Sometimes you
basic.
gotta make your own Spectros.
They were just better Pokemon.
but yeah,
Especially Origins. You actually controlled it. You had your Spectrum fighting with you. while you were doing all this stuff, and you could just go into spectrum mode and then all on the same field with them. And I'm like, this is what I want from a Pokemon game.
I think that's what a lot
Overall,
of people want from a Pokemon game now.
overall, I feel like indie companies, on the last point that I wanted to pick out, is that they themselves, like you said, play your games. They are gamers themselves and know what they want to see from a game and implement it to their games and such. So I feel like that's where, when you get to a AAA company, or like, you know, the big name AAA companies and stuff, they forget is that, can they enjoy the game that they play, thus an audience can enjoy the game that they play. But yeah, I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about the indie versus AAA and such like that. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add, Clef?
I want to add that no matter if it's indie, if it's AAA, Quad 8 doesn't exist, as long as it is a labor of love and you can respect your audience to try to understand, like, there is such a thing as going too far, but if you can, like, measure yourself, respect your audience, and love what you're doing, the final product will get you what you actually deserve, and for the time invested, you will
Which,
get
funny
everything back.
enough, I think the prime example of that has recently been announced was the announcement of Okami 2.
Okami sequel.
Yeah, the Okami sequel is a labor of love. It's honestly has a large enough fan base that the AAA company in charge of it will know they're gonna get money from it, but they allowed the creator the time to make it the way he wanted on his terms. And
Which is kind of,
honestly, it's a breath of fresh air in our industry, in the current predicament of the industry at the moment.
it's also the same reason why we're never getting Portal 3 or Left 4 Dead 3, because
There's no
Valve is
labor of love
waiting.
put into them.
No, because Valve is waiting for something original instead of being the ones that make the something original.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, until next time, everyone, this has been May Anastasia on Otaku Nightly Hour, and we hope you had a Otaku Nightly Hour. Alright, bye!
And remember, they live in your walls.